I sat at the gleaming mahogany table in my brother Michael's dining room, watching his wife Jessica's lips curl into a sneer. "No wife, no kids, no life," she declared, gesturing at me with her wineglass. "Just a waste of space." Everyone nodded in agreement. Michael cleared his throat and casually mentioned he had borrowed $75,000 from my savings account. When I questioned this, they all insisted my money was better used by someone with a real life. Instead of arguing, I simply smiled, excused myself, and left. They had no idea what I had set in motion. 3 days later, my voicemail was full of their desperate pleas for help. Before I reveal what happened next and why their desperation was entirely of their own making, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this family learned the hard way that respect isn't optional, it's essential. My name is Aaron, and at 38 years old, I have built a life that makes me genuinely happy even if my family doesn't understand it. As a software architect for a major tech company, I earn a comfortable 6-figure salary that allows me to live exactly as I choose. And what I choose might seem strange to some: no marriage, no children, and a minimalist apartment that stays mostly empty because I'm rarely there. My passion is travel. Not the resort type, but challenging expeditions to remote mountain ranges and isolated villages around the world. I've summited 4 of the 7 highest peaks on Earth and have plans for the remaining 3. Between expeditions, I volunteer as a mentor to underprivileged teens, teaching them coding skills and mountain climbing basics at a local youth center. Financially, I'm in an excellent position. Living well below my means and making careful investments has allowed me to build a substantial portfolio. I donate approximately 20% of my income to humanitarian organizations focused on bringing clean water and education to remote communities I've visited. I rarely discuss these donations or my financial situation with anyone, especially family. My independent lifestyle wasn't something I stumbled into. It was a deliberate choice that evolved from my earliest years. Growing up, I watched my parents' marriage deteriorate into silent resentment, 2 people trapped by financial dependence and social expectations. I promised myself I would only enter relationships that added genuine joy to my life, not out of obligation or fear of being alone. I've had several serious relationships over the years, but they ended when it became clear we wanted different futures. One girlfriend wanted a traditional family with multiple children. Another couldn't understand why I would waste money on charitable causes rather than luxury purchases. Each parting was amicable because I've always been transparent about my priorities. The freedom to disappear into the Himalayas for a month, or to spend a weekend teaching teenagers how to code, or to fly to Guatemala on 2 days' notice to help install water filters, these are things I value more than the traditional markers of success. My small apartment contains few possessions beyond quality outdoor gear books and a high-end computer setup. I drive a reliable but modest car that's paid off wear clothes until they wear out and spend money on experiences rather than status symbols. This lifestyle has brought me profound contentment and purpose. The problem, however, has always been my family's inability to understand or respect my choices. My brother Michael is 4 years my senior, and by societal standards, wildly successful. As an investment banker, he pulls in bonuses larger than my annual salary. He married Jessica shortly after college, and they wasted no time having 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, now 14, 10, and 7. They live in a sprawling 5-bedroom house, in an exclusive neighborhood drive matching luxury SUVs and vacation at 5-star resorts. From the outside, they appear to have the perfect life. Their social media accounts are carefully curated showcases of designer clothes, gourmet meals, and professional family photo shoots. What isn't visible in those polished posts is the mountain of debt maintaining this lifestyle requires, or the constant tension that simmers beneath the surface of their marriage. For as long as I can remember, Michael has treated my life choices with a mixture of condescension and pity. When I decided not to attend an Ivy League school despite having the grades, opting instead for a public university with an excellent computer science program and substantially lower tuition, he told everyone I couldn't handle the pressure. When I chose to rent rather than buy a home, he spent an entire Thanksgiving dinner lecturing me about throwing money away. My decision to remain childless has been treated as both a personal failing and an affront to the family. Jessica's attitude toward me deteriorated from polite indifference in the early years of their marriage to outright contempt. At family gatherings, she would introduce me as Michael's brother, who never settled down or make pointed comments about my extended adolescence. Their children, taking cues from their parents, began treating me with the same disrespect. My nephews would roll their eyes when I tried to engage them in conversation, and my niece once asked me directly why I was such a loser. Despite this treatment, I continued making efforts to maintain a relationship with my only immediate family. Our parents died within a year of each other when Michael and I were in our 20s, leaving us with only each other. This sense of obligation kept me coming back for holidays and occasional Sunday dinners, though my visits became less frequent over the past 2 years as the disrespect intensified. What Michael and Jessica didn't know, or chose to ignore, was that beneath his impressive income, Michael was deeply financially irresponsible. He had approached me multiple times for loans to cover unexpected expenses, which I later discovered were actually payments for luxury purchases he couldn't afford. Despite promising to repay these loans, the money never materialized. I had written off approximately $20,000 over the years, considering it the price of maintaining family peace. 3 years ago, Michael approached me with what he called an incredible investment opportunity in commercial real estate. He needed a co-signer for a substantial business loan, as his credit had been damaged by some previous ventures that failed. Against my better judgment, I agreed to co-sign with clear written terms that he would be responsible for all payments. The contract included a clause giving me a 15% ownership stake in the property as compensation for the risk. For the first 2 years, everything went smoothly. Michael made the payments on time, and the property appeared to be performing well. 6 months ago, however, I received a notice that 3 consecutive payments had been missed, putting the loan in danger of default. When I confronted Michael, he dismissed my concerns, claiming it was a temporary cash flow issue that he would resolve immediately. Unconvinced, I began monitoring the loan more carefully and discovered he had made only partial payments since our conversation, insufficient to catch up on the arrears. I decided to prepare for the worst by setting aside an emergency fund that could cover the loan if necessary to protect my own credit rating. This fund contained $75,000, money I had earmarked for an upcoming expedition to Mount Everest, representing years of disciplined saving. What I didn't know was that Michael still had access to one of my accounts. Years ago, during his divorce scare with Jessica, they had separated briefly before reconciling. I had added him to a savings account so he could access funds in an emergency. I had forgotten to remove him after the crisis passed, never imagining he would abuse this trust. 2 weeks before Christmas, I discovered the emergency fund had been completely drained. Bank records showed Michael had transferred the entire $75,000 to his personal account. I was stunned by this betrayal but decided not to confront him immediately. Instead, I chose to address it at the upcoming Christmas gathering, wanting to understand his justification face to face. What Michael didn't realize was that his theft had triggered a contingency plan I had developed after the missed loan payments. I had consulted with my attorney about protecting myself if the situation deteriorated, and we had prepared legal documents ready to file if necessary. Michael's unauthorized withdrawal of my savings was exactly the scenario we had anticipated, and it set in motion consequences he could never have imagined. Christmas Day arrived cold and clear. Michael and Jessica's house was decorated like something from a magazine spread, professional lighting, illuminating the 3-story exterior, a 12-foot tree visible through the picture window, and a wreath that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I arrived carrying modest but thoughtful gifts, books selected for each child's interests, a specialty coffee subscription for Jessica, and a rare bottle of whiskey for Michael. These presents were met with barely concealed disappointment, particularly compared to the extravagant exchanges among the rest of the family. My nephew unwrapped the astronomy book I had chosen and immediately set it aside with a dismissive whatever, while my niece complained that her art supplies weren't from the expensive brand her friends used. The tension simmered throughout dinner. Jessica made several pointed comments about my ancient car and basic clothes, while Michael boasted about their recent yacht club membership and plans for a spring break trip to Bali. Their children chimed in with stories from private school, occasionally glancing at me with expressions that mirrored their parents' condescension. I remained calm, engaging politely, and deflecting the jabs with practiced ease. Inside, however, I was counting down the minutes until I could address the real reason for my visit. As Jessica served dessert, an elaborate tiramisu she repeatedly mentioned was made by our personal chef. Michael refilled everyone's wine glasses and began discussing his latest business success. When he mentioned the commercial property I had co-signed for claiming it was really taking off, I saw my opening. "Speaking of that property, Michael," I said quietly, "I noticed there have been several missed payments on the loan." Michael's smile faltered slightly. "Just a temporary situation. Nothing to worry about. I'm also curious about the $75,000 you took from my account 2 weeks ago." I continued, maintaining eye contact. "That was my emergency fund." The table fell silent. Michael cleared his throat. "I was going to tell you about that. I needed to cover some year-end expenses for the property. It's just a short-term loan." Jessica interjected before I could respond. "Oh, please, Aaron. It's not like you need that money. What would you even use it for? Another one of your little mountain trips. That money was earmarked for something important to me," I explained calmly, "and Michael didn't ask permission before taking it." "Well, we have 3 children to raise and a mortgage to pay," Jessica snapped. "Michael needs that money more than you do. No wife, no kids, no life." She gestured dismissively at me. "Just a waste of space." To my shock, everyone at the table nodded in agreement, even the children. Michael leaned forward. "Look, Aaron, the money is being put to good use. Jessica's right. What do you need it for? You're 38, with nothing to show for it. No family, no real assets. Just wandering around mountains and working with those charity cases." I looked around the table at their contemptuous faces. Something inside me, perhaps the last thread of familial obligation, finally snapped. "I see," I said quietly. I folded my napkin, placed it beside my plate, and stood up. "Thank you for dinner. I think it's best if I leave now." "That's it," Jessica laughed. "No argument, no lecture about how we should ask permission to use your precious money." I simply smiled, wished them a Merry Christmas, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Michael mutter pathetic, followed by their collective laughter. They had no idea what was coming. The moment I returned home, I made 3 phone calls that set my plan in motion. First, I called my attorney to confirm that Michael's unauthorized withdrawal constituted the trigger event we had discussed. She assured me it did, and promised to file the prepared documents first thing in the morning. Second, I contacted the manager of the commercial property, informing him of upcoming changes to the ownership structure. Finally, I called my expedition leader to explain I would need to postpone my Everest climb. What Michael didn't know was that after discovering the missed loan payments 6 months earlier, I had done much more than create an emergency fund. I had meticulously documented every aspect of our financial arrangement, including evidence that he had misrepresented the property's performance to both me and his business partners. My attorney had prepared legal notices, asserting my 15% ownership stake and demanding immediate financial transparency. We had also drafted a formal complaint to the Investment Regulatory Board regarding Michael's mishandling of investor funds, a complaint I had held back on filing out of family loyalty. Additionally, I had discovered through careful investigation that Michael had been falsifying documents to his employer, inflating the performance of client portfolios he managed. I had compiled this evidence but hesitated to use it, hoping Michael would correct course without external pressure. His theft of my savings eliminated any remaining hesitation. The morning after Christmas, while Michael and his family were probably still sleeping off their holiday celebration, the machinery of consequences began to grind into motion. The property management company received legal notice of an ownership audit and asset freeze. Michael's business partners received documentation of financial discrepancies. His employer received an anonymous but detailed report of ethical violations in client account management, and the loan company received formal notification of unauthorized use of collateral funds, triggering an automatic freeze on related accounts. Finally, I filed an emergency motion regarding the unauthorized withdrawal from my account, resulting in a freeze on Michael's personal accounts pending resolution. With these actions complete, I turned off my phone, packed my expedition gear, and drove to a remote mountain range for a challenging winter climb I had planned months earlier. This wasn't the Everest expedition my stolen funds had been intended for, but it would provide the solitude and clarity I needed to process the family rupture. For the next 2 weeks, I would be completely unreachable as I tested myself against nature's most brutal elements, a fitting parallel to the emotional storm I had just weathered. Michael's Christmas morning satisfaction evaporated quickly. He awoke to an inbox full of alarming notifications. His business accounts were frozen pending investigation. The property management company had locked him out of the building and financial records. His partners were demanding emergency meetings. And most immediately, concerning his credit cards, were being declined as he attempted to purchase his children's post-Christmas wishlist items. Jessica discovered the severity of the situation while trying to use their joint credit card at an exclusive boutique surrounded by other wealthy patrons. The humiliation of having her card declined multiple times was compounded when she called Michael and learned they couldn't simply use another card. All their accounts were inaccessible. Their children, accustomed to instant gratification, couldn't understand why their plans for a lavish New Year's ski trip were suddenly canceled, or why the new gaming systems promised for after Christmas wouldn't be arriving. The eldest began to sense something seriously wrong as he overheard his parents' increasingly panicked conversations. Michael's calls to his business partners were met with cold suspicion. The documentation they had received painted a damning picture of his financial management. His meeting with his supervisor at work went even worse. He was placed on immediate leave pending investigation of the serious allegations regarding client accounts. As the situation deteriorated over the following days, Michael's attempts to contact me grew increasingly desperate. His initial messages were angry accusations. "What the hell did you do?" and "You had no right to interfere in my business." These gradually transformed into explanations. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, and I was going to pay you back." By the third day, the tone had shifted entirely to pleading. "Please, call me back. We need to talk about this, and the kids are asking why everything's canceled. I don't know what to tell them." Jessica's messages followed a similar trajectory, beginning with outrage. "How dare you do this to us?" Transitioning to blame. "This is what happens when you have no family of your own to think about," and finally collapsing into desperate appeals. "The children don't deserve to suffer for this. Please help us." Even the children left messages clearly coached by their parents. "Uncle Aaron, we're sorry if we hurt your feelings. Please call Dad back. And we miss you and want to talk to you." The final voicemail left late on the third night was from Michael alone. His voice cracking, he admitted I was wrong. What I did was wrong. "I've been wrong about a lot of things. Please, Aaron, I need your help. I'll do whatever you ask. Just call me back." But there was no answer. While their comfortable world collapsed around them, I was halfway up a mountain face, experiencing a different kind of struggle, one that would ultimately prove far more rewarding. The winter expedition challenged me in exactly the ways I needed. Each labored breath in the thin mountain air, each careful placement of ice axe and crampon required complete focus, leaving no room for rumination on family drama. The team I joined consisted of 6 experienced climbers, all with their own reasons for seeking the particular clarity that comes only from testing oneself against nature's extremes. Around the campfire on our third night, as we huddled against temperatures well below freezing, conversation turned to personal motivations. An older climber named Frank, a retired surgeon with decades of mountaineering experience, noticed my distraction. "Something followed you up the mountain," he observed quietly, while others chatted. "Want to talk about it?" Perhaps it was the environment, the stunning isolation under star-filled skies. Or perhaps it was the unique bond that forms between those who risk their lives together. But I found myself sharing the outline of my family situation. Frank listened without interruption, his weathered face thoughtful. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "You know, in surgery, sometimes the kindest cut is the deepest. Infections need to drain before healing can begin." His words resonated deeply. For years, I had enabled Michael's behavior by absorbing his disrespect, forgiving his financial impositions, and maintaining a relationship on his terms. My desire to preserve family bonds had actually prevented the honest confrontation that might have corrected our dysfunctional pattern years earlier. As we pushed toward the summit over subsequent days, I processed years of complicated emotions. The physical exertion provided release for anger, the camaraderie offered balm for hurt, and the magnificent landscape gave perspective on what truly mattered. By the time we reached the peak, standing breathless above the clouds, I had arrived at both a physical and psychological summit. I would help Michael and his family, but on entirely new terms. There would be accountability boundaries and a fundamental shift in our relationship dynamic. If they rejected these terms, I was prepared to sever ties completely. Either way, I would no longer accept disrespect as the price of family connection. This clarity brought a profound sense of peace that remained with me as we descended and eventually returned to civilization. When I finally turned my phone back on, 2 weeks after Christmas, the barrage of notifications confirmed what I had expected. A family in crisis suddenly aware of how much they had taken for granted. I allowed myself another full day to review messages and consult with my attorney before contacting Michael. When I finally called, his relief was palpable, even before I spoke. "Aaron, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for weeks," I was climbing. I replied simply. While my life falls apart, his voice held a hint of the old entitled anger, but quickly shifted to pleading. "Everything's frozen. Our account's the property. My job." Jessica had to borrow money from her sister just to buy groceries. "That sounds difficult," I acknowledged without offering immediate solutions. "Difficult? It's a nightmare. The kids don't understand what's happening. Jessica is talking about moving in with her parents. My partners are threatening lawsuits. You have to help me fix this." "I don't have to do anything, Michael," I replied calmly. "This situation is the direct result of your choices. You stole $75,000 from me after years of disrespecting me and my life choices." His response surprised me. Instead of more excuses, he said quietly, "You're right." After a long pause, I outlined my terms: full repayment of all money taken with interest, family counseling, financial management classes, a formal apology from both him and Jessica, and a complete restructuring of our relationship based on mutual respect. In exchange, I would work with my attorney to gradually release the financial holds and help them transition to a more sustainable lifestyle. "And if I refuse?" Michael asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Then you'll face this without my help. The legal consequences will play out and we'll go our separate ways permanently." We arranged to meet the following day at a coffee shop, neutral territory where we could discuss specifics with Jessica and the children present. Before ending the call, I made one thing abundantly clear. This is your last chance, Michael. I won't allow myself to be treated as a family resource rather than a family member ever again. The shift in power was unmistakable. After years of Michael setting the terms of our relationship, I was finally establishing boundaries that honored my own worth. I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, selecting a quiet corner table and arranging chairs so Michael and Jessica would sit directly across from me. The setting was deliberate, a public place where emotional outbursts would be constrained yet private enough for honest conversation. When they arrived, the transformation was striking. Gone were the designer clothes and confident bearing. Michael looked haggard in a simple button-down shirt, while Jessica wore minimal makeup and a sweater I recognized from years earlier. The children trailed behind, subdued in a way I had never witnessed. After awkward greetings, Jessica immediately began using the children's distress as leverage. "The kids have been so upset by all this," she said pointedly. "They don't understand why their uncle would hurt their family." I addressed the children directly, maintaining a kind but firm tone. "I know things are confusing right now, but sometimes adults make mistakes that have serious consequences. Your dad and I need to work some things out, and things might be different for a while. But you're going to be okay." Michael, following our agreed terms, delivered a formal apology. "Aaron, I was wrong to take money from your account without permission. I was wrong about how I've treated you and talked about your life choices. I was wrong to dismiss the things that matter to you." Jessica's apology came with visible reluctance, but she managed to acknowledge her disrespect and the poor example they had set for their children. The older children watched this exchange with wide eyes, clearly processing this unprecedented humility from their parents. I then presented a detailed financial analysis I had prepared, showing the reality of their situation and the necessary lifestyle changes. The luxury home would need to be sold for something more modest. Private school would need to be replaced with public education. Extravagant vacations would be suspended indefinitely. One vehicle would need to be sold. Jessica would need to return to work to help stabilize their finances. This isn't punishment, I explained. This is financial reality. You've been living beyond your means for years, and it's caught up with you. Michael nodded slowly. I understand. In the terms of your help, I laid out the requirements, regular family counseling to address the dynamics that led to this situation. Financial management classes for both adults and age-appropriate financial education for the children, and structured repayment of all money owed to me. Most importantly, I concluded our relationship needs to fundamentally change. I won't be disrespected or taken advantage of again. If that's not possible for you, then I wish you well, but we'll need to go our separate ways. To my surprise, it was my 14-year-old nephew who broke the tense silence that followed. Uncle Aaron, where were you climbing? Was it dangerous? His genuine interest, the first he had ever shown in my life, sparked a conversation about mountaineering that gradually expanded to include the whole family. For perhaps the first time, they listened as I described my passion without the filter of judgment. By the end of our meeting, tentative plans were made for me to take my nephew on a beginner hiking trip when the weather improved. As we prepared to leave, Michael pulled me aside. I never really saw you before, he admitted quietly. I was so busy judging your life that I never considered you might be happy with the choices you made. It was a small moment, but it represented the first real step toward an authentic relationship, one based on seeing each other as we actually were, rather than through the distorting lens of expectation and comparison. 6 months later, the transformation in my brother's family was remarkable. They had downsized to a modest 3-bedroom home in a middle-class neighborhood. Jessica had taken an entry-level position at a marketing firm, discovering to her surprise that she enjoyed the challenge and social connection of working again. The children had adjusted to public school with the resilience typical of youth finding new friends and activities. Michael was slowly rebuilding his career from a much humbler position. The ethical violations had indeed cost him his prestigious role, but with my advocacy and his genuine commitment to change, he had secured a position with a smaller firm that allowed him to use his financial knowledge while operating under Anders' appropriate supervision. He was working diligently to repay the money he had taken from me, making monthly transfers according to our agreed schedule. Family counseling had revealed patterns that stretched back to our childhood. Our parents' tendency to compare us, Michael's insecurity behind his outward confidence, and my tendency to withdraw rather than address conflict directly. The children were learning healthier communication and beginning to understand the difference between material wealth and genuine fulfillment. Most surprisingly, Jessica and I had developed a cordial relationship based on mutual respect. As she experienced the satisfaction of earning her own money and contributing to the family's needs, she began to understand my emphasis on independence and self-reliance. She had recently confided that their previous lifestyle had actually been enormously stressful, requiring constant maintenance of appearances they couldn't truly afford. My relationship with my niece and nephews improved dramatically as they saw me as a person rather than a status comparison. My oldest nephew had discovered a passion for hiking through our weekend excursions, while my niece showed interest in the coding skills I taught at the youth center. Even the youngest had begun asking thoughtful questions about the countries I had visited, his worldview expanding beyond material possessions. I had established college funds for each child, separate from their parents' control, and contingent on maintaining reasonable academic performance. This provided security for their futures, regardless of Michael and Jessica's financial situation, the support that honored my role as their uncle without enabling their parents' poor choices. My own life continued to flourish. The stolen Everest funds had been replenished through Michael's repayment plan and my continued saving discipline. I had begun a relationship with Elise, a fellow climber I met during the winter expedition, who shared my values of independence and adventure. We complemented each other perfectly, each maintaining our separate homes and careers, while building a connection based on mutual respect and shared passions. The crisis had prompted me to be more open about my achievements and charitable work, no longer hiding these aspects of my life to avoid family judgment. I had published a well-received book about financial independence and finding personal definition of success, drawing partly on my family experience while maintaining their privacy through changed details. Michael and I were building a relationship that felt genuine for the first time in our adult lives. Our weekly coffee meetings, initially tense discussions of financial obligations, had evolved into conversations about our lives, interests, and perspectives. He had recently asked my advice about teaching his children about money, a request that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. I was trying so hard to give them everything that I never taught them the value of anything, he admitted during one such meeting. I don't want them making my mistakes. Looking back on that Christmas confrontation, from the perspective of 18 months later, I can see how necessary that painful rupture had been. My brother's family had been living in an unsustainable bubble of materialism and status competition. My own complicity in our unhealthy dynamic had prevented any meaningful change. Sometimes the most loving action isn't smooth continuation, but disruptive truth. By allowing Michael and Jessica to experience the consequences of their choices, I ultimately gave them something far more valuable than financial bailout: the opportunity to build authentic lives based on sustainable values rather than appearances. The children, initially the most innocent victims of their parents' collapse, ultimately benefited most from the family's transformation. They were learning financial responsibility, the value of work, and the difference between respect and entitlement. My nephew recently told me he was more interested in studying environmental science than following his father into finance, a declaration of independence that the old Michael would have squelched immediately, but that the new Michael supported with genuine interest. Jessica, who once defined success solely through possessions and status, had discovered genuine satisfaction in earning her own way. "I feel like a whole person now," she told me during a family dinner. Before I was just an extension of Michael's success, Michael's journey had perhaps been the most profound. The collapse of his carefully constructed facade had forced him to confront the insecurities that drove his materialism and competition. Through therapy and honest self-examination, he was building a more authentic identity based on values rather than acquisitions. Our family gatherings now focused on connection rather than comparison. Simple meals shared at a table where everyone's voice was valued had replaced lavish displays designed to impress. Conversations centered on experiences, ideas, and genuine updates, rather than thinly veiled boasting. The lesson we all learned through this painful process was that family relationships must be built on mutual respect to thrive. Money often reveals character rather than building it, and true security comes from internal values rather than external validation. Most importantly, we learned that it's never too late to establish healthy boundaries and build authentic connections. When people ask if I regret taking such drastic action that Christmas, I can honestly say no. The temporary pain prevented a lifetime of dysfunction. By refusing to participate in a relationship that diminished me, I ultimately created space for something much more valuable to grow. Family isn't about unconditional acceptance of mistreatment. It's about creating relationships where everyone is seen respected and valued for who they truly are. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the truth, even when it comes wrapped in consequences rather than colorful paper and bows. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who disrespected your life choices? How did you balance family loyalty with self-respect? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life accounts of family transformation. Consider sharing this video with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these challenges makes all the difference. Thank you for listening, and remember that true family is built on mutual respect, not just shared DNA.